I have been doing some thinking on things, like I'm still working on that one setting that hopefully I'm going to, when I can, start actually writing these things all out. I have found that in the past I was a just start typing and find out where it leads me sort of thing. I would have a vague idea for what happened out there, but it was all discovered as I went along. And there's a lot of writers, very successful ones, who write that way. There are also very many writers who, by the time they actually sit down to do their final draft, they're not writing anything anymore. Everything has already been pre-done. Everything. By the time they're doing the final transcription, there are no surprises. They've written it already. I can't do that. And I'm finding that the first system doesn't really work too well for me anymore, which is why I've been trying to hit just some major beat and plot points, and then I'm going to, well, for the whole, as I've said with the, oh boy, let's try and speak English now. I've been trying to come up with a thing where I tell over a span of a year a bunch of slice of life stories about the Razor's Edge, but it also has a whole bunch of other things that happened within it. There is a whole bunch of overarching stuff. Like in the beginning, everyone's talking about the pressure and everything is happening oddly and bad things are happening, and then the Apple Rock Kaiju rampages and a lot of people end up dead, and then the effects of that ripple outward through most of the rest of the book there. But then life goes on, and so other things are happening toward the end, and then at the end of a year, that's when you finish up. There's no real resolution to things because there's no real big main story you're actually telling. A slice of life story is just that. It is a slice of life. And this is a slice of life in the span of a year that, even though it's a bunch of tiny slices of life, is one big slice of life, and life continued before and life continues after. But there's a lot of things that happen within there, so I'm trying to get the general beat and plot points and then find out how they connect up. I mean, I know how they connect, I know how the things happen, but it's connecting them in the idea of a consistent narrative, which is a bunch of slice of life, so you don't really have to worry so much about. But I've been working on that and thinking on that and trying to come up with other things and cementing and changing stories and ideas so that they'll work. One of the things that I have put as kind of a staple idea behind the Apple Rock Rampages is you do not go near the Apple Rock Kaiju during the hours of 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. And if you have to go within those up there, you don't go with an open wound that's bleeding. And if you do, you make sure it's covered. And if you don't bleed on it. But I've also said that when it's time, when it's bored, and when it's hungry, someone is going to bleed on this thing. And the idea being, I'd first said, like, you know, you're racing along on a motorcycle, let's say you're a biker, and then all of a sudden, you're rolling along the ground, and now my kitty cat is digging around in the box. Just use the box or leave it alone. She digs around in her cat box. Ugh. But you're rolling along, you're off your bike, and then you're getting hurt until finally you're staggering toward the Apple Rock. You can't get away from it. It's the only thing that exists until you're begging for it to just kill you and stop hurting you. You're apologizing for being alive. You finally bleed on it, and then it rampages. So, I've also got the character of Speleodoncus Ray that I'd been working on. And last night while I was out walkies, I started thinking of something that I'm really not sure that I want to do, even in the slightest, because I rather like Speleodoncus Ray, and I've spent some time working on his character. But I was just walking along, and I suddenly thought to myself, wow, remembering how the rampage starts this time with that biker person, wouldn't that be evil if that was Speleodoncus Ray? Oh, No, not this old guy, not this happy, friendly fella who travels around with his speleodonk. He's well over 400 years old. He gets along with everyone. He's a nice guy, a tinkerer, a picker, a fixer. He does stuff, and it would make sense. But I don't know that I want to beat and trash the poor old guy until the Apple Rock Kaiju kills him after he bleeds on it. Somebody's going to die horribly. And then a whole bunch of people are going to die horribly. So, I don't know. I just don't think I want it to be the Speleodonkus Ray. Which, remembering, he's definitely alive, but the Speleodonk, his bike that he's been building ever since, he was under 10 years old, it's basically alive too, so thumbs up for that. But I'd also been thinking on the King in Crimson and a whole bunch of other things, because if we come back to this other idea where I've got toward the end of these things happening, we're in the town of Abernathy. They awaken through their use of increasing domesticated crops, some sort of ancient intelligence, and before it can go back to sleep, it has to kill and eat an X number of people. And it's trapped inside of a chain of events it has long since just come to hate life itself. And it's trapped, it takes no joy in any of the horrors that it is committing, although it used to. I mean, it is a thing that used to kill because killing was fun. And it didn't just kill, people. It killed basically anything larger than an earthworm because it was fun just to make them stop living. So it's not a good thing, not a good character, but it doesn't want to do any of this anymore. At one point, while it's speaking to this one 14-year-old girl and explaining to her what it's doing, it's talking about how at the end of its 50,000th feeding, it thought it was tired and sick of existence by that point. But it was so young, and that point was so very long ago. Simple existence is just sheer ashes in this thing's mouth. It does not want to be up and doing these things. It just wants to sleep its deep sleep, dream its long, slow dreams until it fades out. So the survivor of this talks to the King in Crimson, and then they're going to build a Abernathy Wildlife Preservation Foundation and memorial for those eaten. And it is going to be a large area that they're going to fence off to make sure that nobody builds in this area or grows crops in this area so that it can just sleep. But at the same time, this thing is old, ancient. Tens of hundreds of thousands of years old. It doesn't matter how big of a radius they put around where they think this thing is sleeping. It doesn't matter how much they try to put up signs and such to explain why. This thing will be sleeping long past the end of the King in Crimson's beautiful machine, the Crimson Kingdom. Long after it has fallen, and anybody who is around, well, it's been so long nobody even remembers that there was a Crimson Kingdom. That thing will still be sleeping. There is no way for anyone to make any promise to this thing that they will set aside an area so it cannot be disturbed while it's sleeping. This is a deep time problem. It's going to be sleeping for a very long time. In the short term, doing all this work will of course save some lives, and that's good. But in time, somebody, long after all this that is happening now is no longer even memories, somebody will come up through there and start growing crops, and then it'll hit that saturation point, and then that thing will rise up again, and it will have to kill and eat until it can sleep again. So that's joyous, and the King in Crimson knows this. It knows that it is basically lying to make people feel better, lying to justify doing this thing around it, because they can't guarantee that. Only in the short term is it going to help.